Okay, let's talk about the biggest letdowns and the biggest surprises for 2022. This is a question I asked over on Twitter, and I got a lot of responses. And thinking about it now, I had a harder time coming up with the biggest surprise for me as opposed to the biggest letdown, because it felt like there were a lot of letdowns this year when it comes to games that I was at least interested in and then how they came out. But I'll at least give you guys some of my thoughts around your responses on Twitter. So let's head over there. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you like it and subscribe if you're new. Here we are over on Twitter for games in 2022. What was everyone's biggest surprise hit and what was everyone's biggest letdown? So the surprise hit here for Jacob is Elden Ring. Okay, it was a surprise to me how much I loved it as someone who never got into Souls games. Biggest letdown, though, I love it, is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That came up a lot, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Not the one necessarily that I had as my letdown, but I can understand it, obviously, for the performance issues. However, Elden Ring, that makes a lot of sense because I noticed overall many more people were playing Elden Ring than I've ever seen in a Souls game, and it makes sense when the sales numbers came back. And maybe it was just the fact that it was an open world Souls game, so I guess you could technically get stuck, but not necessarily, since if you're having an issue in one spot, you can walk the other way and find some other new adventure. Whereas in Souls games, a lot of times you'll come up to a point where it's like, okay, if I can't beat this boss, I'm just putting it down because it's not an open world that you can then walk around and kind of make your own fun in. Let's see, we have Ander saying the biggest surprises, Bayonetta 3. Okay, expectations weren't high for it, so it was a favorite game of 2022. I'm playing Sonic Frontiers too, and it's really good too. Unexpected. Hey, I can't blame you. 3D Sonic games, I mean, the expectations should have been lower for that than Bayonetta 3, but biggest letdown, Soul Hackers 2. I have not started Soul Hackers 2 yet. I actually waited for a sale on that one, which, hey, during Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, it's like $30, and then I had one of those $5 coupons for some reason at, I think, Best Buy. It was $25, so I'll take a chance on it for that, if nothing else for the collection. Just says it's a mediocre Mega 10 game. Aaron says their biggest surprise was Need for Speed Unbound. Elden Ring, thanks to its co-op, and biggest letdown was Elden Ring's weirdly restrictive and buggy co-op. Hey, that's how good Elden Ring was. It was the biggest surprise, and it was also the biggest letdown. Matthew has two games that I have not played yet. Tinykin is a surprisingly fun 3D platformer with great art style and writing. I've had a couple of people mention to me that it's a game you should check out. It's on Game Pass, I believe, so I could download it and try it out for an hour or two just to see what the hype is about on that one. And then Somerville was my biggest disappointment. Limbo and Inside Out, it was not even close. Donkey64 said their surprise hit was Elden Ring, as many people are saying here in this thread, but the biggest letdown was Xenoblade 3. It's a fine game, but failed to fix many of the huge flaws of Xenoblade. Really, I thought Xenoblade 3 was definitely better than 2, and yeah, I'll even put it above 1 because I went through Definitive Edition for Xenoblade when it released on the Switch, and going from that to 3, because Xenoblade 2 I played back when it released in the first year of the Switch, I thought 3 was better than both of them. Although I will say this, if you're already not that interested in Xenoblade, whether the combat, I assume, is the big reason why, as it kind of mirrors like an MMO RPG offline, it pulls from a lot of elements from MMORPGs, large party ones, then it didn't really do much to address that necessarily. Like, there wasn't a huge shift in terms of its combat. So if you find some of the combat tropes from the first 2 as not being as appealing, then yeah, 3 is probably not going to click with you either. Oh, Esserol says Triangle Strategy by far. Didn't particularly care for the TRPGs prior, but I found it to be eye-opening to the genre. Okay, if you're now into tactical RPGs, Tactics Ogre just dropped. Go pick that one up. It turned out to be really good. The port is great. The game still holds up now. And then kind of hang out and wait for Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered or remake, because we all know this is coming, right? Lord says the surprise hit was Splatoon 3 story mode and Automata on the Switch. I will say Nier Automata performed, I think, well above many people's expectations for what we've seen some games go to the Switch and do, like, you know, Alan Wake. But Virtuos knows what they're doing. Let down Nintendo servers, no way to improve online for Splatoon 3. I saw a lot of people who kind of dropped Splatoon 3, at least they said they did, because they were getting so many disconnection errors, which, yeah, that'll definitely take you out of a multiplayer game like that. Silence says, biggest surprise for me was Grounded, such a great game. Biggest letdown was Pokemon and its bad performance issues. Truly hope they fix it. Yeah, here's hoping next year they have some magical cure for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We'll see. But biggest surprise being Grounded. You know, I fired up Grounded when they did the big release for it right out of early access, and I see the pull in the gameplay loop with this, but it definitely is a game you want other people playing with you. Like, it is that online co-op survival experience. And while I'm not really into survival games, I think the idea of being shrunken down and really small and seeing everyday objects along with bugs and other things out there, spiders especially, trying to wipe you out, you're building up your bases and stuff. I get it. I don't think it was necessarily for me as I was kind of playing by myself. Oh, Bo picked the game that surprised me, which was, they said Sifu. Sifu was way better than it has any right to be. We all knew Ragnarok, Forbidden West, Elden Ring would be epic. Sifu for me was just as epic. And I gotta say, Sifu, when we were building up to its release, I don't know if maybe I missed exactly what kind of game it was, but that is not what I was expecting it to be when it came out. I was sort of picturing maybe just a somewhat linear action adventure style game that certainly had a very interesting looking art style to it, reminiscent a bit of Samurai Jack, but really when I got into it, I realized it was a roguelike game with some, yes, very punishing elements to it, and you're going to die over and over again, but eventually you figure out a good path and flow to the whole thing, and you can also unlock different paths through the levels to make it easier, so you can build up to that big run where you only die maybe once and finish the entire game young. It was just a very rewarding experience with some very satisfying combat, and honestly, it surprised me. Was not expecting to get that out of Sifu. Max says his biggest letdown was Callisto Protocol. Surprise hit was Signalis. For sure, I've not played that one, but Callisto Protocol, I've come around on a bit more. I started out the game being really frustrated with it, and some of that had to do with the gameplay design, the controls at times, the camera, the small field of view. But as I've gone through, I've done upgrades, you get more and more stuff to help you in combat, and I'm at the end of the game. It feels a lot better in combat. The only problem is I'm at the end of the game, so it seems like a situation where I spent this entire time hitting my head against the wall, frustrated with the combat because of the limited resources, and now at the end, it feels much better, but there's not a lot of game in front of me left. Although they're supposed to do a New Game Plus as part of like their roadmap for updates, definitely would have been a lot better to have New Game Plus at launch, but and we'll see if I go back to this game next year whenever that drops. Now, Kevin says Infernax was probably their biggest surprise, most because I completely missed anything about it before it was out. Got so immediately hooked. Biggest letdown was probably Valkyrie Elysium. And I gotta kind of agree, I was close. That was almost my biggest letdown one. It just didn't, it felt very generic. The demo didn't sell me on it at all, unfortunately. I played it, I'm like, ooh, is this the whole game? And it kind of is. It's a bit unfortunate that they revive Valkyrie for that. And I had to give him a like because he picked out the game that was the biggest letdown for me of the year, which was indeed Mario Strikers Battle League. What a shame this game turned out to be. Really, really missed the mark, and it's unfortunate because I've been checking the patch notes on this, and they really didn't do anything to address the online multiplayer when it came to the party system, where you can only have 2 people like in a party at all, like so 2 different switches. You can't do 4 switches, so you and 3 friends can come together and play online matchmaking against 4 other people. It's just not possible. You just can't do it. I can drop into Call of Duty and Warzone with 150 people, but you can't do 8 different people in a room for Mario Strikers. It's just impossible. Also, even that frustration aside, there just wasn't much there, and it doesn't appear that they've updated it that significantly with content. They added some new characters and stuff, sure, but unfortunate. I will say it, especially since we went from the Wii to this, and there was a long gap in time. I just thought they would have come to the table with something a bit more interesting, but it just kind of fell into the typical tradition of Mario sports games. It releases with very little content, and then when they're all done, it has just little content. But that would be my biggest surprise as Sifu, my biggest letdown for the year being Mario Strikers Battle League. It was fun going through the thread here on Twitter just to see what everyone was thinking, and there were some very interesting answers, and some games I just haven't even played, or in some cases heard of. So let me know if you guys like this kind of video where I'll put a question out on Twitter, come back a couple days later and see what everyone's responses are, and maybe talk about them here on camera. And let me know down in the comments what your biggest letdown was of the year and what your biggest surprise was of the year. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.